On Christmas Eve 2002, a pregnant woman disappeared without a trace. 4 months later, the waters of San Francisco Bay revealed a horrifying secret that would turn an ordinary husband into one of America's most infamous convicted killers. To everyone around them, Scott and Laci Peterson seemed like the perfect couple. Scott was charismatic and successful, Laci was kind and outgoing, and together they were excitedly preparing for the birth of their first child, a baby boy they had already named Connor. Their home was decorated for Christmas, their future appeared bright, and nothing suggested that within hours everything would change forever. According to Scott, the morning of December 24th began like any other. After eating breakfast together, he left home around 9:30 a.m., saying Laci planned to walk their golden retriever before finishing preparations for Christmas dinner. Scott told investigators he drove nearly 90 miles to the Berkeley Marina for a solo fishing trip. When he returned home later that afternoon, the dog was wandering outside with its muddy leash still attached. Laci's purse and car were still at the house, but Laci herself had vanished. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, and no obvious clues explaining what had happened. Police initially launched a missing person investigation as thousands of volunteers searched Modesto, California, while helicopters, search dogs, and divers worked tirelessly to find any trace of the 27-year-old mother-to-be. The case quickly became national news, and Scott appeared repeatedly on television, thanking volunteers and pleading for information. But behind the scenes, detectives began noticing inconsistencies. He rarely asked investigators for updates, displayed little visible emotion, and often seemed unusually composed despite his wife and unborn son being missing. The investigation took a dramatic turn when detectives uncovered Scott's secret affair with a massage therapist named Amber Frey. Amber had no idea Scott was married. In fact, weeks before Laci disappeared, Scott had told her he had lost his wife, and that this would be his first Christmas without her. A chilling statement considering Laci was still alive at the time. After learning the truth, Amber immediately contacted police and agreed to secretly record every future conversation with Scott. Those recordings would become some of the most damaging evidence in the investigation. While publicly portraying himself as a devastated husband, Scott continued flirting with Amber, inventing elaborate lies about his whereabouts, and even called her while standing near search efforts for his missing wife. Every conversation exposed another layer of deception, causing investigators to question not only his honesty, but every detail of his story. Still, suspicion alone could not prove murder. There was no body, no crime scene, no murder weapon, no confession, and no eyewitness. The case appeared to be at a standstill until detectives focused on one detail that seemed insignificant at first: Scott's fishing trip to the Berkeley Marina. Months later, that single location would become the key to solving one of the most notorious murder cases in modern American history. For nearly 4 months, investigators searched without answers. Every reported sighting ended in disappointment, and while Laci's family continued hoping she was still alive, detectives quietly focused on the one person they believed knew exactly what had happened. Then, on April 13th, 2003, everything changed. A couple walking along the shoreline of San Francisco Bay discovered the remains of a newborn baby, and less than 24 hours later, another set of human remains washed ashore less than a mile away. DNA testing confirmed the devastating truth. They were Connor and Laci Peterson. The discovery shocked the entire country, but what truly caught investigators' attention was the location. The bodies had surfaced in the same bay where Scott claimed he had spent Christmas Eve fishing alone. Overnight, what had once seemed like an ordinary alibi became the strongest piece of circumstantial evidence in the entire case. Detectives immediately revisited every detail of Scott's movements. They learned he had secretly purchased a small fishing boat just weeks before Laci disappeared and had told almost no one about owning it. They also discovered that on the morning Laci vanished, he had made homemade concrete anchors in his warehouse. Only one complete anchor was ever recovered, leaving investigators to question what had happened to the others. Prosecutors would later argue that those missing anchors had been used to weigh Laci's body down before it was dumped into the bay. As investigators continued building their timeline, Scott's behavior became increasingly suspicious. While volunteers searched tirelessly for his missing wife, he quietly sold her vehicle, attempted to sell their home, and seemed unusually focused on moving forward with his life. Then, on April 18, 2003, police arrested him near a golf course in Southern California. Inside his car, officers found thousands of dollars in cash, multiple cell phones, camping equipment, survival supplies, and his brother's identification. Prosecutors argued he was preparing to flee before he could be formally charged. The trial began in 2004 and quickly became one of the most closely watched criminal cases in America. Although prosecutors never produced a murder weapon, a confession, or eyewitnesses, they carefully presented a chain of circumstantial evidence that painted a compelling picture. Scott's affair with Amber Frey, the lies he repeatedly told both investigators and the media, the timing of his fishing trip, the location where Laci and Connor were eventually found, and his behavior before and after the disappearance all pointed toward one conclusion. After months of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached its verdict. Scott Peterson was found guilty of first-degree murder for killing Laci and second-degree murder for the death of their unborn son, Connor. He was initially sentenced to death, although years later that sentence was overturned, and he is now serving life in prison without the possibility of parole. More than 2 decades later, the murder of Laci Peterson remains one of the most disturbing true crime cases in American history. Not because investigators uncovered a perfect crime, but because they solved it without a confession, without eyewitnesses, and without a murder weapon. Instead, they pieced together a trail of lies, deception, and calculated decisions until the truth became impossible to ignore. In the end, it wasn't one single piece of evidence that convicted Scott Peterson. It was the story those pieces told when they were finally put together.